Hey guys, it's me. I'm here to talk to you about East Coast Transmedia. Last time we were talking about West Coast Transmedia and what West Coast Transmedia is. So you remember the West Coast Transmedia is the type of transmedia that utilizes large offerings that drive revenue, that really expand the brand and make the brand big, right? So we were looking at things from the MCU, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, sort of all the big stuff. Now, I actually want to take some time to talk to you about the small stuff, East Coast Transmedia. So let me just share my screen, and hopefully, as we go through some of these examples, I got some videos. They may lag a little bit on the recording, but I think you're going to get the general sense of what we're talking about. So with East Coast Transmedia, whereas West Coast Transmedia goes and it expands the size of a brand, what East Coast Transmedia does is it really dives deeper into the audience experience and extends the audience's experience. So it doesn't grow the brand, it just extends the experience of the audience that they already have. So instead of really kind of it may say you start with a movie, instead of making that really wide, right, and going big, what we do with East Coast Transmedia is extend an audience's experience by using different mediums to go deeper into a single story. So we're not necessarily creating a bunch of extra stories and a bunch of multiple stories in a way that just increases that volume and size of a brand and really scales the brand in a big way that drives revenue. All we need to do with East Coast Transmedia is we stick with one story and begin to go deeper into that one story in some smaller, more experimental, engaging ways. Right. So I'm gonna give you some examples that can really flesh that out. Right. But instead of going wide, we're going deep. That's the big distinction that I want you to take away. So how do we know what an East Coast transmedia offering looks like, or how can you spot one in the marketplace? The big thing is dependent stories. And what dependent stories means is that these things cannot exist in the marketplace independently by themselves without something else building context for them. So they can't just operate by themselves in the marketplace to be a standalone enjoyable, comprehensible, understandable entertainment experience. So you remember when we're talking about standalone stories, right? With West Coast Transmedia, the opposite end of that coin is if you're not standalone, then you're going to be dependent. If you're not dependent, you're going to be standalone. So these are sort of the opposites of each other. So when we talk about standalone, we mentioned the MCU and how you can watch Black Panther in the MCU without necessarily engaging with any of the other MCU content and still be able to enjoy Black Panther as its own movie. You can understand it, you can enjoy it, and at the same time, you're incentivized to go check everything else out. With dependent stories, you can't enjoy it as its own thing without watching the other stuff or playing the other stuff. And I'm going to give you examples to make that make sense, right? But East Coast Transmedia is going to be dependent. Typically, they're smaller, right? And so instead of a TV series, you have a web series. Instead of a console video game, you may have a mobile game. Instead of a Broadway play, you have a community theater offering. Instead of a feature film, maybe you have a short film, right? So typically they're just scaled smaller. Uh, Relatively, they're inexpensive, right? And so instead of $50 million for a console video game, maybe you're spending $30,000 for a mobile game. Instead of $100 million for a feature film, maybe you're spending $100 for a short film. Just relatively inexpensive. And with East Coast Transmedia, primarily these things do not drive revenue. What they do drive is engagement, okay? Engagement. So if you go back and remember our value propositions that you read about, that we went over, right? The value propositions of why transmedia works in the marketplace. One of the value propositions was it is Transmedia helps engage the audience to keep that audience happy. It feeds the dog, so to speak, right? Every time you engage an audience positively, it builds brand equity inside of them. And when you have that brand equity, then you're able to just increase their level of fandom. So engagement's a super important thing. And with East Coast Transmedia, the focus isn't necessarily on monetizing the offering. It's just there to feed the dog, just there for engagement purposes. Okay, so all these four things are the things you want to look at when you're trying to decide whether something is East Coast. But just like the most important part of West Coast was whether something's standalone, the most important part for these four for East Coast is the same thing. Is it dependent? If it's dependent, that's gonna be the dispositive issue of whether it's going to be East Coast or not, right? Typically, dependent things are smaller, inexpensive, and have engagement, but the smaller offerings, inexpensive engagement drivers, those three aren't going to determine the issue. The determinative factor in the issue is going to be whether it's dependent or not, and typically these other things sort of follow along. Okay, so this issue of whether it's dependent or not is vitally important in your distinction between West Coast and East Coast. So, for example, with my book I think is 19 chapters, right? Let's say I wanted to re-engage my audience with a bonus chapter 20. Okay, bonus chapter 20. But I decided not to write it out. I wanted to shift the medium, and I wanted to do a YouTube video where I talk through bonus chapter 20 with a whiteboard, and I just draw out all the concepts, and that's how we're going to do bonus chapter 20. And I put it on YouTube, right? So the first question to ask yourself, first of all, is that transmedia? And if that is transmedia, then we can go to the next question. So is it in a different medium? We have book to YouTube video. Yes. Does it extend the story or the content? Yes. So you're getting extra information that you don't get from the book, right? So we're extending that content, extending the story, additive comprehension. You're learning something new in bonus chapter 20. So we shifted medium and you're learning something new with the extension of the story. Therefore, it is transmedia. So now that you know that it is transmedia, now you begin to say, okay, this transmedia project, what styles of transmedia does this project utilize? And so we know it's made up of a book and a YouTube video, but let's see what styles are at play. So the first thing we want to do is look at the book. And the book is driving revenue. It took a long time to produce. These are early indicators that it could be West Coast. But the big question is, does this stand alone in the market, right? So is it possible to read the book and understand the book without ever seeing the YouTube video? Yes, it is, right? So since you can experience it by itself, that means it's standalone in the market. That means within this transmedia project, that book is a West Coast component, okay? West Coast component. Now, the other part, the YouTube video, it's smaller. It was inexpensive to shoot. I'm not really making money off of it, right? So it's not driving revenue. But the big question to say is it dependent or is it standalone? So if you've never read the first 19 chapters of the book ever, and you just stumble upon bonus chapter 20 on YouTube, do you think that's going to make a lot of sense to you? Probably not, right? Without those first 19 chapters to set the context, then when you get the bonus chapter 20, you're going to be confused. You're like, what the heck is this guy talking about? So that means bonus chapter 20 relies on the first 19 chapters for context, meaning, and value. It relies on the book for context, meaning, and value, right? Which means that bonus chapter 20 video is an East Coast extension of the West Coast book. Okay, just like breathe it in for a second, let that marinate. That YouTube video is dependent because it cannot exist by itself without the other thing building context, right? So in this transmedia project, we have a West Coast component in the book, and we have an East Coast extension of the book as the YouTube video, right? And they work together. So hopefully that clarifies the difference between dependent and standalone. Okay. So the good news about East Coast Transmedia, this is why we love East Coast Transmedia, is that it's quick to market. You can produce these things pretty quickly. It doesn't take 5 years to make a AAA console game. It doesn't take 2 years to make a movie, right? We can take 2 weeks or 2 days or 2 hours, depending on what it is, and get this thing to market, right? So this is why we love East Coast Transmedia. The reason it's good to be fast to market is because it helps you engage quicker and more often with your audience, right? The bad news about East Coast Transmedia is that it doesn't really drive revenue, typically, right? I mean, sometimes like Star Wars and things like that, like the Star Wars brand can monetize East Coast Transmedia, but pretty much for most of the earth that's not Star Wars, East Coast Transmedia isn't monetized. It's called a loss leader, okay, a loss leader, which means we know we're not making money directly for it, but it's there just simply to engage the audience, build brand equity, feed the dog, right? Keep them on the hook, right? And really just keep them as fans and really just feed that fan base. That's what it's for. Now, that is value. It's just valuable in a different way. It's not financially valuable, it's like emotionally valuable to the audience, right? So just like with West Coast, it has its good parts and bad parts. East Coast Transmedia has good parts and bad parts as well. So let's look at some examples of this. One example is in an early 2000s CW show called Dawson's Creek. And what this is sort of a dated example, but it's a pretty good example. What Dawson's Creek was interesting. They had a drama, right? A 1 hour drama on TV that was a television show about all these teenagers and sort of their sordid love lives and things like that. But in addition to the TV show, they also had Dawson's Inbox, which was a website that simply looked like Dawson's email inbox. Okay, looked like Dawson's email inbox, and you could, between episodes during the week, you could just follow along in Dawson's inbox, and you could see the emails coming in. You could see the emails that he was typing and sending out to other people. You could go through all his folders and see his saved emails. And what that did was that they continued storylines from the previous episode. They set up storylines in the new episode. And the characters just kept talking to each other. It was a really neat thing they did back in the early 2000s. So the first question to ask is this transmedia? Is it in a different medium? We go from TV show to email, yes, or website, I guess, yes. Does it extend the story? Yes, of course. It extends storylines. It sets up new storylines. You're getting more information from the characters, et cetera, et cetera. Pretty cool offering, right? So we know it's transmedia. So now that you know it's transmedia, now we just need to figure out, do the components of this transmedia project, what styles of transmedia do they employ? So if you've never, ever seen Dawson's Inbox before, can you watch the TV show and have that make sense? Yes, you can. That means the TV show is a West Coast component. It stands alone in the marketplace, right? That story stands alone, which means it's going to be a West Coast component. It's also very expensive. It's also driving revenue. It has all those other identifiers with it as well. It's big, it's expensive, and it drives revenue. Those are the things we're looking for that typically associate these standalone stories, right? So that is going to be a West Coast component. But with the inbox, if you've never ever seen an episode of Dawson's Creek and you just stumble upon Dawson's Inbox online, right? Are you going to know what that is? Is that going to make sense? Is that going to be an independent entertainment experience? Probably not, right? It's going to be out of context. You're like, why am I reading this dude's emails? Like, what, who's Dawson? Who are these people emailing? It's going to be out of context, which means that that website, Dawson's Inbox, relies on the show for context, meaning, and value, which means that that inbox, Dawson's Inbox, is an East Coast extension of the West Coast show, right? And then we have other things. It's probably inexpensive. It didn't take long to produce. It's relatively small. They're not making money off of it. The reason they're doing it isn't to generate a bunch of cash. The reason they're doing it is to simply keep that audience engaged during the week, right? That's really kind of what we're looking to accomplish with this East Coast extension. So that's a good example of what an East Coast extension is. Fourth Wall Studios did a cool thing where they were a transmedia company that launched several years ago in LA. They got a massive investment from one of the richest men in LA. They developed a technology called rides.tv. And what that did is created some interactive features with these digital series that they were producing. And so their first show they produced was Dirty Work, and that about a crime scene cleanup crew. And they utilized the Rides TV technology. Hopefully this video doesn't lag too much, but hopefully you still kind of get the sense of it. Check this out.
Hello, Dickren.
Pack the van for a murder.
Get the job done or you're fired.
2012, Fourth Wall Studios launched its interactive comedy series, Dirty Work. Launching on Fourth Wall Studios' platform Rides.tv, Dirty Work is the story of a Los Angeles crime scene cleanup crew who work the midnight to dawn shift. Each 30-minute episode is centered around Pete, Roxy, and Michelle as they tackle yet another gruesome cleaning task assigned by their overbearing boss, Dickren.
Are you giving me fuck attitude?
No, sir.
And making their job even harder is the constant appearance of Pete's annoying roommate, Hummy.
This place has a foyer.
It's foyer.
Potato.
No, it's potato.
But Dirty Work is much more than an online comedy series. Dirty Work is an immersive transmedia experience that reaches out to the audience and delivers the story across multiple mediums. Combining phone calls, texts, emails, and additional content in the form of fun facts and digital star cards, Dirty Work uses the devices audiences use every day to deliver a show that is like no other.
All the elements of your life, your phone, your email account, your Twitter page, your Facebook page. What if a story was aware of all those things?
Let's use all these channels that come into our lives and tell a story across all of them at once.
We're bringing people entertainment value that's more personal, more dynamic, and at the end of the day, more emotional.
Oh, look at that. Pete's impressed.
All right, enough of this bonding shit. Let's just get back to work.
It all starts at Rides.tv. Here, audiences can choose to log in and experience the full version of Dirty Work, or can select light mode and sit back and watch. If you choose the full experience and enter your email and phone number, the story will be delivered to you beyond the screen.
You will get a text from me.
Yeah, I got it.
A character makes a phone call and your phone rings. The cleanup crew boss, Dickren, sends you an email. You eavesdrop on Pete's inner thoughts, letting you be part of the drama.
She is almost messed up enough to date me. Tattoos, sad eyes, daddy issues.
Star cards give you extensions of a moment, a new perspective, a flashback or a flash forward, or pay off a joke set up in the episode.
Hey.
As the episode unfolds, the video timeline and chapter breaks reveal moments where the transmedia elements are anchored in the story, allowing you to go back and explore.
Are you,
No, let's go.
Yeah, no. Do you play basketball?
The Dirty Work YouTube channel, Twitter, and Facebook pages give fans additional content in the form of bonus and behind-the-scenes videos, and are a great place to comment and share with your friends. Dirty Work is produced by a creative team who come from diverse backgrounds in film, television, and games. But what we all share is a passion for good storytelling and the desire to innovate. Dirty Work is the first step in Fourth Wall Studios' goal to evolve digital storytelling from linear web video to truly innovative transmedia experiences that deliver on the promise of digital entertainment.
super interesting stuff. And so if you didn't completely understand what they did before you watch the digital series, you put in your phone number and your email, and then as the characters text message each other in the show, you actually don't see what they're texting in the show. You get the text message on your phone at home as they call each other in the show. You actually, your phone rings at home and you hear that conversation through your phone. As they email each other in the show, you get those emails in your inbox, right? And so there's all this super interesting interactivity, right? Is it in a different medium? Yes. Does it extend the story? Absolutely. You're getting new story information through those different channels, right? So we know it's transmedia. So is it possible to watch the show without all the other stuff? Yes. Even the video says you could turn all that stuff out off and do light mode, right? But if you're not watching the show and you just start getting some random calls and text messages from characters you've never heard of before, is that going to be able to make sense? No. So that means these phone calls, text messages, and emails are going to be East Coast extensions of the West Coast show. Okay. Are they making any extra money off of it? No, but they're getting that extra added layer of engagement, and that's why they're doing it. Pretty cool stuff. The Walking Dead. We talked about The Walking Dead being a good example of West Coast transmedia, right? But The Walking Dead actually is a good example also of East Coast transmedia. And what they do primarily with East Coast Transmedia, they do a bunch of web series. And so if you watch the pilot episode of The Walking Dead, there's a half of a zombie that is prominently featured in the Walking Dead. It's actually the first zombie you see in the world. And people call her Bicycle Girl because it makes Rick Grimes fall off his bicycle when he sees it. So there's been a lot of fan interest about that particular zombie. And so what the producers of The Walking Dead did is they went back and told a 7-part web series called Torn Apart, all about who that zombie was before she became a zombie. Really super interesting, actually really emotional story that they told. They did an entire web series just based on a red machete that in one of the seasons of The Walking Dead kind of pops up in multiple times in multiple episodes with different bad guys, and they do an entire web series that doesn't have any dialogue, that just follows the red machete around. Really kind of interesting artistic aspect of The Walking Dead. They also did for the Fear the Walking Dead, they did a web series called Flight 462, where Fear the Walking Dead is set in LA, and they have a web series called Flight 462 where the flight is trying to land at LAX, but they can't land at LAX because there's a zombie apocalypse going on, but they can't figure out what's going on down below, right? Then somebody ends up dying on the plane. They turn into a zombie, start eating everybody, and the plane crashes, right? And so in between episodes, they would air these new episodes of Flight 462 in between the episodes of the actual TV show, I mean. And it was just a really cool way to keep that fan base fed throughout the week, which was really interesting. And then in addition to that, what they did at the end of the end of the season, when the plane crashed, when you're watching this season 2 premiere, you actually see the plane crashing as well. And then they take the 2 main characters from the web series and they pull them actually into the main series, which is really interesting stuff. So The Walking Dead really utilizes a model of web series as East Coast extensions. There was another thing that they did where they partnered with Shazam. And this was a really cool thing because Shazam is an app that allows you to check your phone, like kind of what song is playing, over the speaker, and it can tell you what song is playing. It's sort of has built-in functionality now with the iPhone. But they did a thing with the Fear the Walking Dead pilot where they did the partnership with Shazam. There was a scene where there were some characters that were trying to get off the freeway, and they were stuck in traffic, and up ahead of them about 100 yards, there was a car accident, and they had police cars and fire trucks and and people there was a crowd of people that were recording things with their phone, just standing around. And the camera kind of stayed back with the main characters, and they, you couldn't really see kind of what was going on. And then they hear a bunch of gunshots, and they don't know what's going on, so they just jump in their truck and drive away. And if you're just watching the TV show, that's all you see. But if you would have been using Shazam, Shazam would have picked up on this watermark in the audio, and your phone would have come on, and this video would have played. And what they started doing is they started giving you the video feed of the people who were close up, who were recording everything while you're watching the show that has the camera kind of far back. And this is the video you would have seen. This is actually the very first zombie ever seen in the Walking Dead universe. Checks out. So this guy, he died in the car accident, and now he's coming back as a zombie, the first zombie in the Walking Dead universe. Checks out. Really interesting stuff, because you're watching this close-up video on your phone as you're watching the sort of the further away footage on the TV show simultaneously. Super cool. Were you able to still follow the TV show if you didn't do the Shazam thing? Of course you could, right? Which is why the TV show is West Coast. But if you're not watching the TV show and like a random zombie video comes up on your phone, it's going to be out of context. That's why this is an East Coast extension, right? They're not making money off of it. It's smaller and it's dependent, but it's there for engagement. It's creating a really super cool layer of engagement. So that's why it's valuable, right? Watchmen did a really cool thing. If you watch Watchmen on HBO, they did a really neat East Coast extension, where this is a show where it's illegal to be a superhero, and there's an FBI task force sent to essentially investigate superheroes, right? So they had one FBI agent. His name was Petey, and he was just sort of obsessed with superheroes, and he was on the case. Well, in between episodes, one thing that they would do is they created what they called Pedopedia through the HBO website, the Watchmen website, and these were basically his case files that he would build, right? And you look, and they had like cool, they had like legal documents, they had a lot of different informational documents, medical history about certain characters. They had fake newspaper articles that gave you more information on events, gave you more information on characters. They had legal memorandums that went into all the information, much more. And so every single week between episodes, you were able to find more of the story here in Pedopedia, just PD's actual case files. Super cool stuff. They're not making any money off this. It's smaller, but the big determining factor is if you're not watching Watchmen, this does not make sense. It's dependent on the show for context, meaning, and value, which is why this is East Coast Transmedia. The value coming through the engagement that they get from the audience midweek. Okay, let's see. Man in the High Castle. It's a show on Amazon. It's as if we lose World War II and Nazi Germany and imperialist Japan sort of rule the U.S. Check out this video of this thing called Resistance Radio that they did. It's pretty interesting.
Calling America. Are you out there? Alone? Waiting for someone to come along and illuminate your way? Trust me, you are not the only ones.
The Amazon original series The Man in the High Castle is set in an alternate 1962, one where the Axis power won the war. To draw and engage new audiences to the show, we created Resistance Radio, a pirate radio network broadcasting subversive music and messages of rebellion from an America where dissent is a death sentence. Resistance Radio features 3 scripted shows, each with its own DJ host, providing a dramatic glimpse of life in the greater Nazi Reich and Japanese Pacific states. For our music, we partnered with Danger Mouse, Sam Cohen, and a roster of top artists to record a playlist of 18 new songs. At launch, we smuggled 7-inch propaganda singles to influential conspirators.
Holy crap, this is so freaking cool!
Unveiled an installation and concert at South by Southwest.
And when push comes to
and streamed one of the first Facebook Live audio initiatives.
The reality is we handed our country to a Nazi madman, and threw practically everything good we ever stood for out the window.
The show immediately grabbed the headlines, engaging our target in a wide-ranging debate about the meaning of freedom and authoritarianism in today's America. And the response to Resistance Radio was overwhelmingly positive, culminating in the release of a companion soundtrack album and the pirate radio concept being written into the show itself.
What kind of music is this?
It's pirate radio from the neutral zone. A little reminder of what we're fighting for.
Unlike any music I've ever heard.
Right? Super interesting thing. If you're not watching Man in the High Castle, out of context, right? But a really, really super cool East Coast extension. There's a show called 24 Legacy that was about a guy's experience in the military and how when he was in the, or it's actually his experience after the military. While in the military, as referred to in the show, they did a thing where he went and he killed this high-level terrorist. And the premise of the show is now that he's out of the military, this high-level terrorist, his brother sort of grows up and then is back for revenge. So they refer to this thing called the raid that you never actually get to see in the show until Fox partnered with Samsung on a VR experience. Check this out.
1 minute!
You can go all the way around.
Oh, jeez.
This is Carter. Go, go.
We're moving.
Super cool stuff, right? They, if you're not watching the show, out of context, so that's why it's an East Coast extension. They didn't make a lot of money off of it, right? But it was a super cool way to give the fans extra story and engage them in a cool way. There's a movie, Christopher Nolan movie called Interstellar. In the movie, there's a team that goes to space and never comes back. It's called Team Zero. And because Matthew McConaughey, he wasn't the first one to go to space, so there's a team that never came back, and you never really actually find out what happened to them, to Team Zero in the movie, until Christopher Nolan released a comic book called Absolute Zero. And Absolute Zero is the story of what happened to Team Zero and why they never came back, right? And it didn't make a lot of money for him, didn't make any money for him probably, but it was just a valuable engagement of the fan base and a smart way to extend that story. Taylor Swift had a cool thing where, music, she had a music video called The Blank Space Experience. And I'll just play, about a minute of this music video. Check this out.
Nice to meet you, where you been? I could show you incredible things. Magic, madness, heaven, sin. Saw you there and I thought, oh my God, look at that face. You look like my next mistake. Love's a game, wanna play. New money, suit and tie. I can read you like a magazine. Ain't it funny? Rumors fly, and I know you heard about me. So hey, let's trying to see how this one ends. Grab your passport and my hand. I can make the bad guys good for a weekend. So it's gonna be forever, or it's gonna go down in flames. You can tell me when it's over, if the high was worth the pain. Got a long list of ex-lovers, they'll tell you I'm insane. 'Cause you know I love the players, and you love the game. 'Cause we're young and we're reckless, we'll take this way too far. It'll leave you breathless, or with a nasty scar. Got a long list of ex-lovers, they'll tell you I'm insane. But I've got a blank space, baby, and I'll write your name. Cherry lips, crystal skies, I could show you incredible things. Stolen kisses, pretty lies. You're the king, baby, I'm your queen. Find out what you want, be that girl for a month. Wait, the worst is yet to come. Oh no, screaming, crying, perfect storms. I can make all the tables turn. Rose garden filled with thorns. Keep you second guessing like, oh my god, who is she? I get drunk on jealousy, but you'll come back each time you leave. 'Cause darling, I'm a nightmare dressed like a daydream. So it's gonna be forever, or it's gonna go down in flames. You can tell me when it's over, if the high was worth the pain. Got a long list of ex-lovers, they'll tell you I'm insane. 'Cause you know I love the players, and you love the game. 'Cause we're young and we're reckless, we'll take this way too far. It'll leave you breathless, or with a nasty scar. Got a long list of ex-lovers, they'll tell you I'm insane. But I've got a blank space, baby, and I'll write your name.
All right. So she's a crazy person. She lives in this giant house alone, right? We don't know why she's crazy. She just says, "Yeah, I got a long list of star-crossed lovers who say that I'm insane." That's kind of all we get. We don't know much about her, right? Until her record label released this app called the Blank Space Experience that allowed you to explore the entire mansion, learning more information about Taylor Swift, why she's crazy, her past relationships. There's 42 different narrative clues that you can kind of do these little mini games and unlock. It was a 4-hour experience. Pretty cool. Super interesting stuff, right? And they didn't make a lot of money off of it, but what they did is they engaged the audiences not just for 3 minutes that they did with the song, but now for 4 hours and 3 minutes with the app. Pretty cool stuff. If you haven't watched the music video, this means nothing to you, right? Which is why it's going to be an East Coast extension. Purge has done a few cool things. One of the things the Purge has done right is they released these digital episodes of this thing called Morning Time in America. It's like a fake Good Morning America show that gives you more information about like the broader story world and sort of all the stuff that goes into the Purge in this sort of this weird, quirky, light tone. Check out some of them.
Welcome back to Purge Shopping Channel. I'm Carson Cruz.
And I'm Rachel Stamp. We've got some great deals coming your way, so let's dive right in.
Up first, an official product of the NFFA, the 12-hour emergency survival candle.
Carson, you know this is one of my personal favorites. An absolute must-have if you're staying in on Purge night.
And take a look at this meter along the side. It tracks the hours as the candle burns down from commencement all the way until 7 a.m.
I have to tell you, I bought one for my husband last year, and it really helps to set the mood, if you know what I mean.
Whoa, I didn't know. Hubba hubba, I didn't realize you were so sassy, huh?
Oh, I know. Stop it, Carson. Stop it. Okay. Now, most candles on the market, they die out in a few hours, but this is designed to burn evenly for all 12.
I mean, these make perfect Purge party gifts, don't they? And they're a real lifesaver if there's a blackout or someone cuts your power.
And it looks like we've got a caller, Linda from Malden, Massachusetts. You're on the air.
Okay, Linda.
Hi. Yeah, so I was wondering, are these candles scented?
Great question. Let's find out.
Yes.
Sandalwood.
Cheers, my
and
lady.
Soon they'll be available in rose.
Oh, that's funny because all I smell is the bullshit the NFFA spews to keep our country from real change.
Sorry about that, folks.
Sounds like Linda from Malden could use Purge night to work out some anger issues.
Just like I do.
Here's another one. Check this out.
Thanks for joining us here at Morning Time America, and welcome to our post-Purge morning broadcast. We are live from New York, and here on the East Coast, another Purge has just ended. I'm Rachel Stamp, and as you can see, my usual co-host, Carson Cruz, is not with us this morning. We thank him for his sacrifice.
Rachel, you have a little...
Oh,
do you mind? You got it.
All right, everyone, Melanie to the rescue. Please welcome former Human Interest correspondent and now co-host, Melanie Stevens.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I am so excited to be here. Big shoes to fill.
Really? Well, let's check in on headlines from last night's Purge. The NFFA is projecting that participation in this year's Purge was the highest in history.
In New York State, multiple Department of Motor Vehicles offices were burned to the ground last night. The fire seemed to be the work of a single disgruntled purger fed up with long lines and bureaucratic red tape. DMV officials today say that wait times have tripled.
Now, Boston is in major cleanup mode after Purge night litter bugs dumped a year's worth of mattresses, appliances, and other refuse in the streets in order to circumvent the city's usual trash removal fees.
Oh, that seems like a very smart use of Purge night. And in our first Purge fail of the morning, a Florida man is dead after accidentally purging himself last night. The man was reportedly roaming the streets in an armored car and wielding a grenade launcher when things took a turn.
He forgot to roll the window down, didn't he?
Indeed he did, Rachel.
Well, I hope he had a blast. Well, while the Purge is over here on the East Coast, there are still a few hours left in California. Let's check in with our West Coast correspondent, Chad Weatherby.
So you kind of get the vibe, right? If you're not watching The Purge, it's completely confusing. Doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Why it's an East Coast extension. Weezer is a band. They did a cool thing. They did an album called "The End of the Game," which was kind of cool. And then, fittingly, in the music video, they sort of have this weird sort of alien creature that was in one of their music videos. And then, fittingly, they created a video game to go along with the music video. So this is the creature from the music video, and then they did this interesting sort of side-scrolling video game that goes along with it that reveals sort of who this creature is, and it really extends that story of the video. Super interesting thing, but it's going to be East Coast extension because you don't know who this is. You can't understand the video game unless you watch the music video, right? So that is the basics of an East Coast extension, right? Smaller, right? They're going to be less expensive, focused on engagement. But the biggest thing that we're looking for is it dependent in the marketplace? There's 100 other examples I could show you, but think about what the what Overwatch does with how they extend Overwatch into comic books and animated short films, right? They do a lot of super cool stuff to be able to set up their characters and flesh out their characters in bigger ways. So those are going to be East Coast extensions of Overwatch. There's lots of examples of how this works, but hopefully you get the concept of these things are dependent, smaller, focused on engagement. If you understand that, we should be pretty good. And then we'll see you back in class to talk about more creatively how we begin to execute and create the stories that fit these things. Hope you enjoyed it and learned a few things.